It works. All right. Well, I think we can just start this off, man.
Hi, Shane.
Danny.
What's up, buddy?
What's happening, bro?
How's it going? Thanks for having me. Nice little place you got here.
Yeah, it's not really technically mine, but
nobody has to know, you know.
Yeah, I could just pretend this is the Shane Larson studio.
We have two ferns
in between. Per the usual routine, we just did some sauna and ice, a few rounds, had some cool conversations inside the sauna. Still warming up.
Yeah, I'm freezing my butt off.
Yeah.
Did we do something else besides that?
I did some strength training.
Oh, no. I was thinking about something else.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe ate something.
We ate something before, didn't we?
Nice little snack.
Snacky wacky.
Listeners could take a guess. Yeah, man. We met through MetaMen, and I've had Michelle on. I've had, I think maybe one other person. Not sure. I can't remember, but I could tell immediately that we clicked, you know, just through conversation of similar perspectives, beliefs, and it doesn't even have to be about like what you believe in or different perspectives. It was just kind of like it was a day of just relaxation, grounding, talking, and you can just kind of tell when you can vibe with someone. So I you know, and in the beginning stages of this podcast is a combination of iterations of me having the confidence to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And then also just, it is a really cool tool and outlet to be able to have people on that I become friends with here in Austin, and I can grow and have a connection or strengthen a connection via this conversation, this outlet. So
get to know each other a little bit more, man.
Get comfy, bro.
Can't just be talking about flat Earth. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy we get a chance to chat, connect. You know, tell you a little bit about my story. You know, get into some stuff.
Yeah. So why don't we dive in? So if you want to, I don't know where you want to begin. If you want to start off with what you're currently working on, and we can take it from there and then go towards your background.
So I moved to Austin about a year ago. I grew up in New York. Originally was born in Russia. We immigrated when I was 4. Lived in New York for like 25 years. Then I moved abroad, moved back to Russia, among other places. Spent about a decade there from 2010 to 2020. Lot to talk about in terms of that experience, but then I moved back to Cali.
Just 2020 in New York specifically, or?
The end of 2019, I went back to New York City because I was starting this company that I'm working on. Spent some time there. Then I moved to LA, San Francisco. So I spent like 2019, 2020 in Cali. And then after COVID, went back to Russia because I have a son who's out there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, if everything's going to be remote, I might as well be near my kid. You know what I mean? Plus, like Russia was a little bit more relaxed in terms of like COVID stuff. But what I'm working on now is I guess you can call it an alternative to social media that's focused on families, right? When I had my kid, I realized that I don't want him to be referencing my Instagram and my Facebook to understand like who his father was, right? Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of stuff that I want to share with him, whether it's kind of life lessons or family history or just like books, movies, playlists that, you know, I was surprised to find that there's no platforms that were designed to help you kind of capture everything you want to share with your kids. So as soon as I realized that I can make a product like this, and I basically became obsessed, and that's like the only thing that I've been really working on for the last couple of years. But before that, I used to work in investment banking. I worked in finance, worked in commercial real estate. I studied religion and political science as an undergrad. I got a master's in political science. It's been an interesting life. That brought me here to Austin.
Yeah. Every time I was stalking your Instagram just to kind of prep a little bit for this podcast. And, but I've been following you for the course of the past few months.
Yeah, since we connected.
Yeah. And, you've been around the world, it seems, or at least you've taken some beautiful pictures in Russia and different parts of the United States. And, so lifeArk, let's crystallize that a little bit. I noticed, and I'm wondering too, if you created a podcast for a short period of time during the COVID lockdowns. Was that something to kind of help with marketing, but also brand lifeArk?
I mean, I genuinely love talking to people, you know what I mean? And I got a lot of cool friends and I'm surrounded by a lot of interesting people. And I try to have interesting conversations. So I figured why not, like create a podcast around that, right? Yeah. And you could have a theme around not only talking about what a person's experience is, but talking to people that are parents and being like, all right, how is technology affecting the parent-child relationship? Yeah. How is social media affecting psychology and all these changes that are happening really quickly? How do you adapt and how do you stay connected to your kids and not like outsource their education to, a social media company or
Absolutely.
Or a screen? And yeah, I started recording that a little bit when I was in Russia, and then I spent, some time recording a couple episodes during the pandemic. But, startup, bootstrapping, it's just, you got a lot of things that you got to handle in parallel. I got the app, I got marketing, I got design, I got customer development, I got fundraising. And then on top of that, also like, recording, editing, doing the post-production for a podcast. I was just like, it's too much. So I want to get back into it now. But yeah, I think the idea of talking to people about, their experience being parents and how to manage both entrepreneurship and then being a father or a mother is like super important, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it'll resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. This project I think is one of it's very virtuous that you're doing this, and it's well needed. It's a valuable platform to introduce, and I'm excited to see how it grows. Mm-hmm. It is going to be, I think, it's going to be a challenge for sure. Because we've got the network effect of a lot of people already on these major centralized social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter,
Instagram, TikTok,
and all that. Yeah. But I think it's really important because there's no, I don't think there's no going back in regards to using digital, protocols and just platforms and kids on screens. They're going to be on screens for their education in the future.
Yeah, it's just a question of where they're going to get the information and who's going to be their influencer.
Yeah.
Right? Is it going to be like, no offense to Kim Kardashian, but is it going to be Kim Kardashian? Is it going to be like you as a parent, right? So that's what we want to do is we want to, one of our kind of like taglines is be your child's first and most important influencer.
Yeah.
Right. So it's definitely going to be a challenge getting people. And I don't know if necessarily we want to say like, look, stop using Facebook, stop using Instagram. Like everybody can stay on those platforms and they will. The question is, hey, why don't you think about, like what parts of yourself and what parts about your experience and your family history and the things that you've learned do you think is important enough to capture for your kids? Right. And our challenge now, and this is what we're working on, we're going to relaunch the app in about 3 months. It's like, how do you make a user experience and a UI and UX that's like super fun and super emotional and interesting to get you to spend the time of your day that you'd be spending scrolling or doing something on social media focused on your kids. So yeah, I think what we're coming out with now is going to be pretty impressive because there's been a lot of, over the last couple of years since we launched, there've been a couple companies that came out doing similar stuff to us. But they're going to go through the same mistakes that we went through in the past. Like I see all the kind of competitors that are kind of sprouting up, and they still haven't gotten what's going to be able to engage people in the long term. So I'm pretty excited about what we're going to release. But yeah. Especially given what's going on now in like society and everything like that. Like, as you said, it's super important timing, right? Because I think people are realizing like, social media is not what it used to be. Now there's Facebook, and it's definitely not a place where you want to connect with your kids. And I don't think it's a place where you want your kids to be getting influenced by things online. Like all the research and all the statistics that are coming out about how heavy social media usage affecting child psychology, fear of missing out. Their brains, their self-esteem, like suicide rates, depression. Like there's nothing good about it. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, there needs to be an alternative, and I'm hoping that we're going to get enough hype and attention and grow quick enough to become that kind of alternative, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For families.
Yeah, for families. I think it's a noble cause, and it's something that's, like I said, very much needed. And so something that, I think about as I'm getting older, turning 30 in a couple months, I'm working on subtracting things out of my life. And this does come into play in the digital landscape and the physical landscape. And so part of it's really, for me, I kind of want to get to a point where I'm like more of a minimalist in regards to the possessions that I have and just, the things that I use, the tools that I use on the digital landscape. And over the course of the past few years, using even when MySpace was created when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I remember.
And the development of Instagram and Facebook, I do notice you could look back at videos like these old archived videos that you've had from the 90s, early 2000s, and you see the interactions that people with like their family. Like it's not this constant computer
you're engaged.
entertainment. You're engaged. You're more connected. You have more of this like deep connection with your family.
Yeah, and people were actually doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Playing Frisbee, going to baseball games, kayaking, fishing, barbecuing, stuff.
Yeah. So I think that we've lost that. And I see that. So I have younger sisters. I have friends that have kids as well. I'm single, so I'm not a parent. So it's not something that I'm like super focused on right now, but I definitely will be when I get older.
Well, how's your relationship with your parents?
It's good. It's really good.
How well do you think you know them?
I think I know them pretty well. Okay. I think that I can get to know them better. But I've had deep connections or conversations with my father. My mother passed when I was younger, but my stepmom, I have a good connection with her as well. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there can be more work on just having conversations about our past and lessons that we've learned. And I don't really know much about my mom's side of the family, and really my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents. So I do want to get into knowing that more, knowing my roots. And then also, storing in a more orderly, intentional fashion, storing memories, storing information, traditions, kind of re-encapsulating like a family sigil, if you will, or like a family archive or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, part of what we're doing is, we're not only about parents and their kids, but we're also about helping you get to know your parents a little bit better. So one of the kind of features that we have is we have like questions and prompts. So you could send your parents, like you could send your dad or, your stepmom or somebody else, be like, hey, answer this question for me. Like, what's your definition of love?
I'm actually kind of doing that right now with my dad. There's like this other book there's an app you can do, and it sends them questions, and I think they deliver a physical copy. Yeah,
it's called Story Corpse or Story Worth. Yeah. So they send you a question a week, and then they send you a book at the end of it. Yeah. So we're doing something similar, but you could not only do it in text, you could also like do it in videos and stuff like that. Cool. We're gonna, record all that stuff and keep it, so you get like a real portrait of who they are. Because a lot of times you can't think of the questions, or you might be shy. You know what I mean? So the fact that you're at a distance could make it easier to just like send them stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
What about like did your mother have brothers and sisters that could like give you information about?
Had a half sister.
Okay.
Yeah, I've tried to reconnect. Unfortunately,
not yet.
I mean, I actually did have a conversation with her on the phone. First time and really ever.
Recently?
It's probably like a year and a half ago, 2 years, and I intentionally got her number and texted her, and she responded, and she was willing to have a conversation. But there's just certain things that it seems to me that are kind of buried, that are hard to discuss,
on their side
a little bit. Yeah, I think so. Stuff that I might not even know. But I'm
could be interested to find out. You're probably interested.
I am very much interested in it. And
where are they at?
They're, I think she's, I think, in Michigan. And then there's other family members, but I barely keep in touch with them, unfortunately. It's more so my dad's side, which is pretty small. And then my stepmom's side is also pretty small. So I do have a motivation to reach out to them, get to know them better. And I have some cousins on, my aunt's children that are much older than me, but
you can always just show up and be like, listen,
let's talk.
Whatever happened has nothing to do with me, but I'd like to know. Yeah. So let's have a chat. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. I want to do that in a way that's like not super intrusive.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to do it,
people's comfort zones and their boundaries can always be flexible,
Yeah. push the limits a little bit. But so the construction of this app, interested if you could describe this family. It's almost like a heritage story archive.
I don't like using, it is part of it. I hate using words like legacy and heritage because we've actually tested like those words in terms of marketing. Like people don't want to think about that sort of stuff. They don't want to think about legacy. They don't want to, they don't want to accept or understand or realize the fact that everyone's going to die. So, we try to kind of stay away from that, but it's more just like, listen, we're creating a fun and easy way to collect, like memories, right? Meaningful memories, life lessons, and family history to share with future generations, right? And we want to paint like a real digital portrait of who you are based on like a lot of different categories. So it's not just going to be like one timeline where it's like, oh, these are my cute photographs and like a nice quote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing, which I don't want to give too much away until we launch it, but that's what we're trying to do is we're helping you actually create like a real 360-degree like portrait of who you are based on your life experience, your childhood, the things you've learned, the things that have influenced you, right? To have all of that, right?
Even like journal entries, potentially.
Yeah, everything. Like it's literally
pictures,
anything you want.
Oh,
anything
cool.
you want. Yeah, playlists. Like I save playlists for my kid. Like so when he gets older, I'm like, all right, well, this is hip hop, this is classical music, this is rock. These are movies that you could watch that I think are pretty freaking awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like these are documentaries, these are books, these are podcasts, these are videos.
It's like a cloud-based too.
Yeah, I mean everything is going to be stored on the cloud.
Okay.
Encrypted, safe, private, right? Ad free. We're not going to be looking at your data.
I was going to say that's probably a pretty important aspect of how it gets stored.
Yeah. And we're thinking about incorporating potentially blockchain, right, to make it like decentralized and guarantee that it's going to be around forever. That's in our roadmap. But
blockchain, huh?
Well, why not?
Yeah, we were talking about Nostr.
Add that buzzword and make our valuation.
Yeah, the blockchain can be used as a buzzword, but there is definitely ways to a very recent innovation we've been talking about Nostr becoming a decentralized communications social media platform. So it would be interesting to see how you could incorporate this initiative, and it's something that not many people might know that they treasure this now, but I think as people are diving into this kind of hypnosis of the social media algorithm. You're 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour in every single day or more. Some people are on TikTok for 3 to 4 hours a day.
TikTok is a fucking Chinese psyop. I mean, you should know that, right? I mean,
I've heard about it. Yeah.
I mean,
well, so Texas just Governor Abbott actually just
I heard
banned TikTok, at least on the state level of usage.
Well, I mean, it's not like a conspiracy theory. Like, TikTok is a Chinese company. It's like centralized and run by the Chinese government, and they literally change the algorithm or tailor the algorithm to show specific content to kids in specific countries. So, for example, like in China,
I've heard this.
Yeah, like kids are being shown like, people being athletes, getting PhDs, becoming scientists, becoming doctors, becoming lawyers.
And there's a time usage too. Like they can only use it for a certain amount of time.
Exactamundo. Yeah.
But
and then when they surveyed, I think like school children or tweens in China about like who you want to be when you grow up.
Scientists.
Yeah, they were like, I want to be a scientist. I want to be an astronaut, right?
But what about the United States?
Yeah, and then when they survey the United States, like, oh, I want to be a freaking blogger. You know what I mean? Like,
or an influencer.
Yeah. Not a knock against influencers, but if you get rid of Instagram, you're all out of fucking work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like you look at the content that's being shown to kids, it's like, fails, fights, stupid shit. You know what I mean? Like, tits, ass, sorry to fucking offend anybody, but it's just like trash. You know what I mean? And yeah, it makes you click and it makes you look further, but like, what is it actually instilling in the kids? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a big difference. And I've heard that multiple times that it seems like the algorithms are controlled by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
And that's super disturbing. But you try to talk to people about that nowadays and like, oh, are you a conspiracy theorist? Like, and then other people also have.
That's just what people call you when they can't argue with you.
Yeah. Yes. Valid. That's a valid point.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people have made a living off of TikTok too. So they've got tons of followers and
that's what I'm saying. It's like a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? Like,
but they can use other platforms.
Yeah.
Start migrating it over.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping that like, listen, that's great. That's all good. But family values, the family unit, that's going to be our kind of, that's what we're going to try to take over. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited, dude. I can't wait to this. I mean, we have an awesome team. We're literally working with our designers, and I'm using Midjourney to like create like crazy interfaces. Yeah, I was literally up at like 1:30 in the morning last night after going out to a party. Literally what I do is I come home and I fucking turn on like Midjourney, and I'm like, design an app that has like.
You're gonna have to help me utilize Midjourney because I do want to start using it.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty impressive. ChatGPT is also quite impressive, but it's obviously
it seems like it's controlled as well.
It's controlled, and it's like, you know, write something nice about Donald Trump, and they're like, no. Write something nice about Fauci, and they're like, Fauci's the best, so is Joe Biden. So yeah, it's crazy, dude, because it's like, I mean, they're creating these unbelievably useful platforms and technologies which shouldn't be fucking biased, right?
It's ideological.
Yeah, why? You know what I mean? Like, and it's obvious, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, is like, you make such a good product, and now it's just going to be tarnished with this stuff, you know what I mean? So
yeah, so one documentary, I've mentioned this on other pod episodes, The Social Dilemma was something that really like provided clarity on what's actually happening.
Yeah. I mean,
and I've also just, even if I didn't watch The Social Dilemma, to understand how these algorithms, these centralized algorithms, are being controlled by a small group of people that work at Twitter, that work at Instagram, I still could understand. If you just listen to your body, listen to your thoughts, and you build that awareness, you can start to sense like, I don't feel calm. I don't feel better about myself and my perspective. I'm like kind of tense because I'm always just scrolling and you know.
COVID made it worse too, because when people are locked down, you have fuck all to do, and you're just like sitting in your phone. You're either sitting in your phone, or sitting in Netflix.
I mean,
or you're getting shit done. Like the people that actually started grinding and working during that time, like they launched off and they lifted off. But I mean, you know, the amount of time that people spend in their phones and on social media platforms, I think tripled. As a result.
Drinking went up, eating like shit went up. Yeah. Actually, some people couldn't go to the gyms, which is
because going to the gym is bad for you. Yeah.
So
is working out and getting sunlight and going to the park.
I just worked out though. I should have.
Dude, I was in LA. I was in Marina Del Rey, and I would wake up in the mornings every single morning, and I would literally just like run on the beach, and I would go to Muscle Beach in Venice Beach, which was boarded off, which was insane. I literally got to Muscle Beach.
Boarded off the beach,
and they put up like fucking fences. So me just being me, I literally would climb over, and I would start like doing pull-ups and push-ups, and like the homeless people would be walking by, and they'd be like, "Yo,
yeah, nice man."
Yeah, and like it was so insane, and I was just like, you know what else they did? There's a skate park in Venice Beach where kids would skate, and they literally took the sand from the beach and put it into the skate park, and I'm just like, who runs this fucking city? Like, are you guys insane? And then and this is what it was like, the cherry on top. This what made me leave LA. So the mayor of LA during the lockdowns, he literally got on TV on every fucking channel as if he's like, you know, Lord Voldemort or whatever. And he's literally telling people, he's like almost word for word, like, look, if you see, you know, like a business working, like a nail salon or a barber shop or a coffee shop or like a fucking person making breakfast, like working during this lockdowns, here's a number, call the number, and we're going to pay you money.
Yeah.
To tattletale on these people like trying to make a living. And then he literally said this phrase. He's like, this is the one time it's okay to be a rat.
Wow.
And I was just like, dude, the mayor of LA just gone on TV telling people to fucking like rat on people, and like, it's okay to be a rat, and we're going to pay you for it. And I'm like, there's something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So to try to.
That was eye-opening.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the government cares.
They care about you.
Yeah. They have your best interests in heart. Yeah. And after this episode, Shane's podcast gets canceled.
I won't be putting this on YouTube. It'll just be.
I mean, listen, we live in a free country. We could say whatever the fuck we want.
Yes,
right?
I agree. I agree, but decentralized YouTube algorithms may wave their wand. But I did see this. This was a this was a growing concern. And just seeing The Social Dilemma, watching just like it was this gradual evolution of, okay, when Trump was in power, the hypocrisy, like just, there was so much divisiveness, and not to say we didn't have that before he came into office, but it just got 5x'd. You know, it went way out.
Because the media machine started also focusing on that. And,
yeah.
you know.
It's very obvious to me and to you and to some other people that can step outside of that and see that the current corporate America media corporations have, I mean, it's just a constant, like anxiety provoking. There's no structure to actually investigating in journalism.
It's just about getting emotional reactions, making people live in fear, and just like,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and like I was telling you that I wasn't really that politically involved.
I
didn't really care about politics as much. As you get a little older, you start to a little bit, and maybe your local jurisdiction. But it just still, even seeing everything that was going on during the Trump era, and then this hysteria during the COVID lockdowns and George Floyd riots and defunding the police, like all this storming at once.
Yeah, which didn't happen by accident. Like,
So The Social Dilemma provided some context and one perspective.
It's actually a really good book. Just sorry to interrupt, but if you like that, then you could read this book called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. I forget her full name, but I think her name was Shoshana. She's an Israeli woman who wrote a book basically about just like,
I think I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's pretty legit.
Yeah.
And they actually made like a little 1 hour like documentary about it too. But yeah, that's along the same lines. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to put that on my list. But also this, I don't know if he's what's his background? He's a professor at New York University, I think. And he wrote a few books.
Jonathan Haidt?
Yes.
Yeah. I've read
Happiness Hypothesis.
I love that book.
The Happiness Hypothesis.
Coddling of the American Mind.
That was the one right there.
And then I think, The Boy Crisis.
The Righteous Mind.
Okay, so I haven't read that one yet.
So the Coddling of the American Mind, The Righteous Mind.
Yeah.
The Righteous Mind was a really cool breakdown of psychology, political science, so understanding why people are divisive or biased towards different political sides. So intertwining those two, psychology and politics, history, religion, and the breakdown of intuition and reasoning. So the human brain, and depending on how you were raised, what are you laughing
Sorry,
about?
when you talk about intuition and reasoning, I'm just picturing a guy who's wearing 4 masks in his car, sitting alone, driving on the highway.
I don't know if that's intuitive there.
Well, say exactly.
But I read these books. So I read The Calling of the American Mind, The Righteous Mind, and The Happiness Hypothesis, and a bunch of other books to really get a breakdown of, why we, if we're raised in a certain culture and we go through different experiences, we tend to side with different social or political beliefs, right? So like certain politicians and whatnot.
Sure.
And that's human nature. But I think that as we were discussing or mentioning, it seems like this computer and media device in your pocket at all times can be weaponized. And that's what's scary. Like I was saying I don't have children, but I do have 2 younger sisters, and I do hope and plan on having kids in the future. And
highly recommended.
Yeah.
Most fun.
I've heard it's great.
Fucking awesome. Yeah. It's like having a pet. This is going to sound horrible, but I always make this joke. It's like having a pet that's a human. Like if you like dogs and you like cats and you think you have fun with them, like having a kid's going to be a lot more fun. It's like the same thing. Essentially the process is the same. You feed it, you take care of it, you keep it alive for the first couple of years, but after 2 years, it becomes an actual like human that you can talk to and you can interact with. You're going to have like a real relationship with. And I think Jordan Peterson said this. He's like, with kids, you have the potential to have the best, most fulfilling and like rewarding relationship that you could ever have with anybody in your life. Plus, not to get too metaphysical, but I realized this when I had my kid. He's like, kids are the only, how do I put this? They're the only example of reincarnation that you can experience in your life.
Yeah.
It's like living reincarnation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little
because it is you.
Yeah, it's a little you.
Yeah, it's like a better version of you.
Oh, it's amazing. I
so
can't wait. I definitely
go off
plan
on a whole tangent about it, being a dad, but it's awesome, dude.
Yeah, so I'm definitely concerned. And once you get older too, you start to there's a balance of being self-centered and taking care of yourself, but a big part of like living a good life is also having people around you, and you want people to be healthy and to have a balanced perspective and to critically think and to have the tools to be able to understand the map of where they are. And I think for me, in my early 20s, right out of college, and once all of these, like the social, political, and COVID scenarios kind of heightened a little bit, and there was the dial turned up in regards to the chaos dial. Mm-hmm. It was difficult for me. It was really hard to internalize like what is going on. And so a part of me had to read a lot. I read a lot of books. I saw that on your Instagram, you seem to be a Jordan Peterson fan. You clearly have read Jonathan Haidt, so we've got some similarities on those mm-hmm. topics. I really like both of those guys there, and so yeah, I mean, like it's been a journey of really understanding your environment, because that's really important. Like in order to succeed in life, you want to be aware of any threats or anything that's going on, and so trying to exemplify this and also demonstrate it to my sisters as well as younger people that I meet. And it's not easy because they kind of look at you like, oh, is this a generational thing? And they're meanwhile using TikTok or Snapchat all day long. And it's
that's what I'm saying. It's a question of where you get your information.
That's where they're getting it from.
You're only going to be a result of what you see, and like what you see is filtered, right? Like you said, this thing.
That's where most of these kids are getting it from. Yeah. But it's interesting to see this, like Texas trying to ban that TikTok. I wonder how that's going to be enforced. But
yeah, it's interesting. How do they enforce that?
I think it's just at
your phone
at the state. So if you're a state employee or like in the military or whatever, maybe I'm not entirely sure. But if you go on Greg Abbott's Twitter, he announced it and he showed it was like just a screenshot of a summary of what they're doing.
They could just ban the fucking thing from the App Store, but
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a free market. I do support free market.
Wait, can Apple take apps off the App Store? Yes, they can.
Yeah, I'm sure they
which
can.
app was taken off the App Store? I think Trump tried to create, not Trump Social, but I think Trump tried to.
In America?
Get TR? It might have been like.
Maybe. Anyway, Parler.
Maybe.
I thought it was Parler.
Was it Parler?
Yeah. Because that was the first social media company that started to say we won't censor anybody. And
yeah.
Trump
and then around the elections when everything was going on, and they were like,
they were like, yeah, we're going to shut you down.
Yeah. No. Stop talking.
So maybe I do want to get a background of political science, like your education, but before I do that, I just wanted to dive into just kind of highlight the mission of lifeArk. And also like the big motivation on like the day this idea came into your mind. You're like, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So the day that my kid was born, I was literally walking and I was waiting.
When was this?
February 9th, 2015.
Okay.
And for some reason I was just like, I want to make him a video that he's going to open up in like 10 years. Cause like, I'm like, he's about to be born. I'm never going to have like, I'm never going to be in this moment again.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I want to capture this. Yeah. I don't know why. I'm a very sentimental guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I literally went outside and walked around. I'm like, hey, but I didn't even know what I was going to call the kid, and I'm like, hey buddy, I'm like, I'm your dad. Welcome to planet Earth. And I just like, I said what I said. And I started doing some things like instinctually. I was like, all right, when my kid grows up, he's not going to be able to talk to his great grandmother, who was my grandma. And my grandma was like my closest family member. She survived World War II in St. Petersburg. Like we had the best relationship that I had with like anybody in the family. And I was always interested as a kid to like talk to her and like interview her. Cause I don't know why. I was just like, tell me about the war. Tell me about this. Like, I just want to know stuff. So, knowing that my kid, when he grows up, he's not going to be able to see her. I'm like, all right, I literally just took my phone and turned on my camera. And I'm like, hey, like, tell me about this. And I just started doing an interview. And I told her, I'm like, hey, your great grandson's going to see this in like 15 years. Like he's going to see you in the future talking to him from the past.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then like, I realized I have all these kind of moments like this video that I recorded for her and the videos of my grandma. And then like, I also have all this stuff, like all these things that I've learned, like favorite books and just like information. I'm like, how do I capture it, organize it, and guarantee that isn't going to see it in the future?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do it? Okay, you can like, I don't know, create an email. You can create like a drive or something like that. And I'm like, how is it that there's nothing designed to help me do this, to help me solve this problem? And I'm like, am I the only person that's thinking about it? And then I started talking to other people and they're like, yeah, you could do it. You know, you could use other platforms, but there's no all-in-one solution that designed specifically for this. And the second I saw that this thing didn't exist, that I'm like, well, this is what I have to freaking do. And I literally like, I used to work in investment banking, doing a bunch of other stuff, and just like everything else fell to the back burner. I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And this, given like my family history and like my childhood and all this stuff, I was like, I feel like everything that I literally had went through in my life, like my interests, like led me to be like the guy that has to bring this thing into the world. So yeah, that became like the mission. You know what I mean?
What were your interests?
Well, religion, philosophy, psychology, understanding how the world works, like trying to figure out what the heck is going on. You know what I mean? Like I studied religion as an undergrad. My dad went to India probably like 20 times when I was a teenager. So he would come back and like, he'd be studying like Sanskrit and like, I think he gave me the Bhagavad Gita when I was like 13 years old. He's like, you should read this. I'm like,
13?
Yeah.
Wow. So
like I've always, it's been interesting. You know what I mean? I've always thought about like big questions. You know what I mean? I've always wanted to do something that was pretty ambitious. Like I never, even when I was working, even after graduate school, it's not like, oh, like this is my dream job. I never knew what I actually, like I never asked myself like, what do I really, really want to do? Yeah. But then when this idea came to mind, I'm like, that's it. Yeah. There's nothing else. So yeah.
How old were you when your kid was born?
31.
31? Okay. Yeah. How old is he now?
8. Turned 8 last week.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in Moscow actually. He's in Russia with his mom.
His mom, yeah.
And unfortunately I can't, because of the war and everything, it's much more difficult to travel there. So I see him once every 3-4 months. I was there in December for about a month. Before that, I was there over the summer. He spent the summer with me here in Austin.
How is that experience with the war going on? I mean, so we get kind of I personally haven't really dived too far into the events that have occurred in Russia versus Ukraine. And you do get this like very biased, it seems to me like, I put up a meme. I think you might have put it up actually. And I took it from you on Instagram, and it was just a square and it's divided and there's just the same picture in each 4 squares inside.
Yeah, different point of view.
And it's a just kind of like this
triangle
hypnosis tool, and so the top left was 2020 COVID, or I think it was like 2020 COVID, 2021 the vaccine, 2022 Ukraine, 2023 UFOs.
Aliens. Yeah.
But so there is this all at once, this encompassing like support Ukraine and Russia's bad. And to be totally transparent, I don't have really any knowledge on the history of modern Ukraine or Russia. And really, I haven't revitalized my understandings of the history of Russia and Ukraine in general. And I don't think a lot of people have that, but they just immediately,
but they're told to like
support Ukraine. And it's just like, so I would love to hear, because you just recently went there, and
I spent 12 years there. Yeah. I mean, look, obviously, you don't want there to be any war, right? So I don't think I know anybody in Russia that's like, oh, this is a great idea, and like, let's support the war and let's fight a war. Obviously, nobody wants it. The reason for why it's happening are, they're obviously never black and white. Sure, you don't want to go and invade a country, right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's ever justified, but again, it's not just that simple. Like, it's geopolitics, you know what I mean? Like, it's obvious that it's geopolitics. So, there's forces that want there to be a war. And I know for a fact that there were negotiations where both Ukraine and the United States came to an agreement at the beginning of the war. And then the powers that be came in and they said, no. So let's just keep it going. So that's a whole separate conversation. But nobody really knows how it's going to end, how long it's going to take. My personal opinion is that once, if kind of the people in power here change in 2024, right? Like if there's a different president with maybe a different agenda, maybe the war's not going to last so long, right? Because as long as we keep funding it, then it's going to keep going, right? So, and again, I'm not saying that it's good that there's a war between Russia and Ukraine, because it's not. It's insane. Like my grandfather's from Ukraine, like, you know, the fact that it's a different country, yeah, sure, but like we're all like cousins and relatives. It's like fucking Canadians in the United States. Like it would be insane for them to fight a war, right? Yeah. So that being said, I mean, in Russia, it's very somber, right? Because there have been sanctions and a lot of people left. I mean, like, you know, more than half the people that I knew just bounced.
Left the country entirely.
Yeah, left the country because they either don't see a lot of opportunities in terms of making money and just working, right? Because it's just, you know, nobody knows when this thing is going to end. And then part of it is, you know, the fear of being drafted, right? Because there was a draft. And obviously they're drafting people that had served in the military and they're breaking it down based on age. But, you know, there's still the fear that on any day things can change and then they could literally just pull you or anybody out on the street and be like, all right, time to go fight. So yeah, and that, you know, that sucks. And obviously it sucks that there's freaking war and people are losing their lives and losing their homes. Like it's insane. But I mean, in Moscow, everything works. Like restaurants work, you know, the saunas work, and everybody, you know, they go on with their lives. You know what I mean? They kind of, I think as a culture and as a nation of people, I think people are just used to being like, listen, like, can't trust the government, can't believe what they say. So in that sense, I think Russians, you know, they're not as, I don't want to say they're not as brainwashed, but like anything they see on TV, they automatically know that that's propaganda. Like they're not going to believe anything that like they see on like, you know, the main Russian news channels, because they know that that's just an instrument of the state feeding you information that they want you to believe. Yeah. So in that sense, like I think people are quite sober. But yeah, dude, it sucks, man, because it's like, you know, you got to take 3 flights to get in there, and you know, what are you gonna do? Yeah.
Is there a pretty hostile relationship between Ukrainians and Russia?
Yeah, as a result, for sure. Like Ukrainians are really like, they, you know, I try to tell people, like, especially when I talk to people, I'm like, don't mix people and politicians, right? You know what I mean? Like, don't think that just because you're Russian, you're automatically supporting Putin and you want to go to war with Ukraine. But I can understand their point of view, you know what I mean? Because their country got invaded, because the propaganda and the information coming from Russia to the rest of the world is that like, oh, 90% of the population supports this. Like, that's complete bullshit. That's a story. That's a narrative that they're trying to sell to make it seem like the people are supporting the war, but that's not the case. But yeah, Ukrainians, obviously, they're not, you know, they're not happy about it. And there's a lot of tension between Russians and Ukrainians now because of that, which there shouldn't be, right? Because like there never was.
They're neighbors too.
Yeah, they're neighbors and they're all fucking like cousins, you know what I mean? Like we speak the same language, and like if you look at a Ukrainian and a Russian person, like they're the same. You know what I mean? And back in the day, it was all just one giant landmass, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it stinks, but you know, you can't blame them for.
What is the main motive again for Russia to go into war? Was it because there's a pressure from NATO?
Yeah, because you know they didn't want Ukraine becoming part of NATO. They didn't want to have the United States. Well, all right. So when NATO was formed, they basically had an agreement saying like, look, there's certain borders, and like you know this side of like that's controlled, but not controlled, but like this part that's like closer to Russia is going to stay closer to Russia, and then like this part, which is like Western Europeans, are going to stay in their bloc. And they've always been teasing this thing of like, all right, well, Ukraine's going to become part of NATO, which means that NATO can bring and the U.S. can bring like their military and their weapons and their missiles like right on the border of Russia. And Putin always said, he's like, that's a hard no. Like, you know, we agreed upon that. That's not going to happen. They were just like playing the game, poking the bear. And then eventually it's like, all right, well, yeah, you know. And literally it's like there have been politicians in the United States like Tulsi Gabbard and other people that said, look, like the only thing that he asked for is us saying, look, we have no position. Like we don't really care. Like it's a neutral country. NATO can decide, right? And I don't think NATO would ever actually accept them to become part of NATO. But the U.S. was just saying, no, we want Ukraine to be part of NATO. We want to put nuclear weapons into Ukraine. So it's like, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So, you know, and I'm not saying that's like justified, but it's like, it's politics. You know what I mean? So, and again, even when the war started, it could have been ended. But like, you know, Boris Johnson flew in, met with Zelensky, and then they're like, no deal. So, damn. And just for information, a couple months after the war started, BlackRock, DuPont, Cargill, and what was the fourth company?
These are all financial firms and as well as big corporations.
They bought 17 million hectares of land in Western Ukraine, like a couple months after. And now it comes out that like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and all these like huge investment banks are going to be in charge of the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Huh.
So it's like, yeah, it's never that simple. I mean, this isn't bullshit like I'm making up. You could look it up.
Yeah.
So it's like literally half the country was already bought by like Western influences, which kind of makes sense because they're saying, look, we're going to send you $50 to $100 billion, right? We're going to help you fight this war with Russia. But in the end, when we got to rebuild, then give us the contracts. Same thing that they did in Iraq, right? Same shit. So
And Putin's just not going to let it go.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think. Well, I mean, look, there was a political strategist. His name is David Goldman, super smart guy. He runs the Asia Times out of, God, I don't want to say Hong Kong, but somewhere over there. He's a very smart man. And he said, look, even if Putin loses the war, like on the actual war front, if he leaves Ukraine in rubble, he can always come back to Russia and say, well, we went in there, we got rid of the fascists and we left. So it's still a win for him, the way that he spins it. You know what I mean? He's a very shrewd political figure, right? Say what you want about him. And I mean, he has been running Russia for like 20 plus years. And like, he's a pretty serious dude. You know what I mean? Like he does conferences for like 4-6 hours with no notes where he'll just answer questions and like debate everyone. You know what I mean? Like he's no joke.
He seems sharp.
Yeah, he is. I mean, I'm not saying he's a fucking good dude.
Yeah,
like,
no,
he bankrupted the country and, you know, he's done a lot of bad things. But, you know, as a politician, I mean, the guy's got like a 12th degree black belt.
Wasn't he in the Russian mafia?
Well, they say he was
KGB.
he was like a low level KGB agent, but yeah.
How'd he get to the ranks of being
That's a good question. So he went from the KGB and then he went to St. Petersburg with the mayor whose name was Sobchak. And that guy kind of like pulled him in there. And when he was in St. Petersburg, he was in charge of a lot of contracts with like Germany and like doing a lot of trade
business
between Europe. Yeah. Okay. And then he was also still kind of involved in the KGB. So he ran both in the security circles and then also in the financial ones. And just people noticed him. And then when Boris Yeltsin, when the people in power behind him, because it's, you know, the president's kind of, you know, back in the day, when there was transition, the person that was put was kind of like a figurehead, right? But there were people behind pulling the strings. So when they realized that Boris Yeltsin is not fit enough, because he was just always like drunk and he wasn't healthy, seriously? Right? Yeah. And they just knew like, all right, we have to pick somebody to like succeed him. So they were like, all right, who can we pick that both like knows how business is done and is also our person? And there was actually a group of people that, you know, I know some of those people that were like in charge of like figuring out like who's actually going to be the next guy. And they're like, all right, they interviewed him, they talked to him and like, all right, go. They basically put him to the front lines. And then when he became the president, he started consolidating power. And he's like, all right, that's all mine.
That's pretty interesting though. So he didn't have any family ties to,
no.
He just kind of worked his way.
He was just a person in the system that the people that were above were like, all right, who's loyal, who's smart, who's going to be able to kind of like manage this now. And they just put him to the front lines. And then he consolidated power and he's been doing what he's been doing for the last like 30 years. So, you know, in one sense, it's not good, but you know, you gotta respect the hustle a little bit. You know what I mean? Especially in a place like Russia that was just like completely in chaos. You know, I mean, he actually brought the country up to a very high level. I think Moscow was like one of the most expensive like cities in the world. They had more Mercedes than like all of Germany. You know, I mean, obviously Russia has more resources than you need and like it's the largest landmass. And in that sense, I think the reason why Putin's so kind of confident doing what he's doing is he's like, listen, you can sanction us. We don't give a shit. We have this. We have all the resources we need to be completely self-sufficient. Yeah. Like, all right. No YouTube, no Disney, like, you know, no Facebook. We don't give a shit.
That's fine. I'm very interested. I would love to invite myself to Russia if you
Dude, you gotta come, man.
Keep me my chaperone.
Yeah, I got so many friends here when they hear my stories about Moscow. And honestly, like I loved, you know, politics aside, right? I mean, just objectively, like I love my experience in Moscow. I made amazing friends.
Would I be accepted?
Yeah, dude. If you come with me, it's like, I don't know. People are like super warm there. You know what I mean? You'd be surprised, dude. Like, dude, Russian people are the nicest, like honestly, like warm-hearted, courteous, respectful people. Even like I've gone to like the Caucasus, which is like Chechnya, Dagestan, Ossetia. Like you hear all these stories, like the people are so freaking warm. Like you come in as a guest, they treat you like you're a king. You know what I mean? Family values, like, you know, you have Southern hospitality here. It's like people are genuinely very, very friendly and like warm and inviting. It's the same thing there. Yeah. Because people are used to only relying on themselves, not on the government. So it's like the quality of the relationships you have and like who you are as a person that plays such a role. Yeah. I love like your reputation and your word and all that stuff. So Russians may seem very like rough and standoffish from the outside because they are, but once you get to know them, like they're all fucking teddy bears. Well, I'm not a teddy bear, but they're like super warm and like very like soulful. You know what I mean? Whereas a lot of people here are like very polite from the outside, but yeah, when you get deeper, it's like, no.
We were just talking about this 75%. You said 75% of the Austin spiritual conscious movement. Let's have an initiation. Well, hold on.
Activation.
We're
just
having
a party.
We're just having a party. Yeah, but it's an activation.
That's an activation.
We're doing drugs.
I'll activate your G-spot. Oh.
Whoa there.
Giggity.
Oh, hey.
Well, that's what they should be doing at those parties, but they just fucking sit and look at each other in the eyes.
Oh. Okay. You're going
just triggered a lot of people parties. There. Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. No, but I go to these parties and I'm like, the ones in Moscow are better. A lot better.
Yeah. I've never been. I would love to go. No. Yeah, I would still even like to see China too. I mean,
I've been to China. Yeah. It's beautiful as well, but it's definitely a different culture. Like the mentality of people there is very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from a Russian, just the middle class Russian citizen perspective, how are they're viewing the war in a way that like no one's happy about it.
Everyone thinks it's insane, dude. Yeah. It's, and they want it to end because it sucks. Like, even if you're going to like a Russian school or university, like because Russia got canceled, like your diploma is not going to be accepted anywhere. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're like, what the hell is even the point of like anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Universities left, like,
seriously?
A lot of companies left. Yeah. Because Russia got canceled. They pushed the cancel button.
Yeah. Even with
I'm not saying it's
the financial system too.
Yeah. They canceled Swift, like
they're
everything.
Accepting Bitcoin, I think now.
They are. Yeah. And it's like, is it justified? Like, yeah. Like, honestly, if the people making these decisions, like if they actually think that would sway or influence the president to change his course of action, like they're completely insane. Like there's no way. He doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like he's going to be doing what he's doing no matter what. And he's going to be using that to flame the kind of flame saying, look, the West is against us. They're doing all these things. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. He's very slick. Like when you listen to his speeches, he actually positions himself as like fighting against the kind of, I don't want to say demonic or satanic, right? Because that all opens up the whole thing.
I've heard a couple references.
But yeah, he's like, look, listen, he's like, we're fighting against like the collapse of Western civilization. He's like, look at these guys. They're saying men can get pregnant. Men can have their periods. Look at what they're doing like socially. Look at what they're doing culturally with kids, like all this like stuff. And he's like, it might not be fully true what he's saying, but he's picking bits of information to kind of make his argument. And those bits of information are true.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of really crazy shit going on in this country, politically, socially, right? And he's playing on that as well.
Yeah.
Saying, look, he's like, if that's what they're trying to bring here, like, no. He's like, men are men, women are women. We want there to be families, like, so, there's a lot going on at the same time. But, I think it's good to be informed. But I think if you pay attention to it too long, then you can go down a rabbit hole and it can affect your mood. And I even notice this myself, like, sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to pay attention to any of that stuff. I want to focus on what I got to do. I want to focus on my own kind of circle, life, family, work, because all that stuff is a distraction. Like I was telling you about conversation that I had with a former mentor and my first boss after grad school. He was the former president of the World Bank from 1995 to 2005. Yeah.
How'd you land that job? Relationship.
Yeah. So when my parents and I immigrated in 1987, my father's a pianist. He's probably one of the best like living classical pianists like on the planet. He's legit.
I should have looked this up before I
he's legit.
With you. I just found this out today, folks.
Yeah, he's awesome. And
what's his name?
Vladimir Feltsman.
Can you look him up online?
If you look him up on Spotify, he's got like 60 million plays, and if you look him up on iTunes, he's got like 40 albums. Yeah. Vladimir Feltsman. Right you'll see his handsome face.
Holy shit.
So my dad was like one of Russia's like leading musicians, and when he applied for an exit visa in 1979, he got canceled by the Russian government. They're like, "Oh, you want to leave? You're not fucking going anywhere." That's him. Yeah. And they took his music off the radio and they didn't let him play any concerts. Yeah, he's legit.
He's got like millions, 28 million on one of his piano.
I hope he's getting paid from it. I don't know.
I'm
not seeing any of that money.
Do you play?
I started when I was a kid. And from what I heard,
I'm following him.
from what I heard from like my grandfather, who was his dad, he's like, look, I have perfect pitch. I have good hearing. Like, I think I have a pretty good instinct for music because of my parents and my grandparents. Yeah, exactly. That's Chopin. Yeah.
This is your grandfather.
That's a nocturne. That's my dad.
This is your dad.
Yeah.
And your grandfather also played.
So my grandfather was a composer. So my grandfather was a composer.
We're going from topic to topic right now. Can you tell me what you told me today?
So all right. So today
this is nuts.
It would be my grandfather's 102nd birthday. So he was born in 1921 and he died in 2013, 10 years ago, actually. That's crazy, 10 years ago.
Today.
Well, he died, his birthday is today, but he died February 13th.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And he's buried in Novodevich Cemetery, which is like the cemetery, like it's like Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's literally buried next to like the former president of Russia, President Yeltsin.
Oh, wow.
Like it's like the nicest like cemetery.
Oh,
yeah. He was like a big deal. It was a big deal. And
who am I talking to?
One of the well, in Russia I'm a big deal. In the United States I'm getting there. So one of the songs that he wrote was sent to space with Yuri Gagarin when Yuri Gagarin went to space. And it was a song about like celebrating the fact that like you're going to space, like you're building all these rocket ships and you're sending a little human in a fucking box to like God knows where. And it was a very well-known song. And because it was his birthday today, I have a friend of mine send me a video of Vladimir Putin singing that song.
Crazy.
That he wrote. Yeah. And I was like, this is pretty legit. Like fucking president of Russia knows my grandfather's music. So I could be like, yo, Vlad, why don't you hire me to be like your emissary to smooth things over with you? I've thought about that, man. I almost went into like, so what, when I got a master's in political science from NYU and I thought about going to the Foreign Service actually, because I was like, I have the perfect fucking background. And I was actually approached by, this is a cool story, side story, but I was actually approached by the CIA when I was living in Washington, D.C. So I moved to Washington, D.C. I'm not a spy. I know. That's the funniest thing is like when I'm in Russia, all my Russian friends are like, you're a fucking American spy, you asshole. And I'm like, yeah, I wish, like if I was a spy, I'd have a black card and we'd be fucking, having much more fun.
Yeah.
Although we had fun. And then when I come back here and I tell people I spent 12 years in Russia, they're like, you're a fucking spy. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Anyways.
Yeah. Funny story. I was in DC and I met this woman at some networking event and like she took me to lunch once and then she took me to lunch a second time and then she started talking about like this interesting program where you like go into the woods and you train for 2 months and you learn all this cool stuff and like, yeah. And I'm like, where do you work? Like, what do you actually do? And she gave me her business card. And at the top of it, it said Central Intelligence Services. And at the bottom, it said like Deputy Director NCS. NCS stands for National Clandestine Services.
Clandestine?
Yeah, it's like the Jason Bourne department of the fucking CIA.
Oh.
Yeah, and she was like, you got the perfect background. It's like you're athletic, you're a wrestler, you study political science and religion, you speak a couple different languages, like you're insane. Why don't you come work for us? And I'm like, I appreciate it. I'm going to tell this story.
She said that too?
Yeah.
You're insane?
Well, no, I mean, I'm adding that part of it. But she was like, you got the mentality for it. You know what I mean? But I'm like, no, I don't want you telling me like who I can talk to and who I can't not talk to. And I don't want to like lie to the people that like I care about, my friends. You know what I mean? Like, but true story. So anyway, yeah. So my grandfather.
But she was doing things in the woods with that.
Well, you train people like, but if
in
like,
the woods.
Yeah, like you go out and you learn a bunch of cool stuff and like survival tips and things like that and like fighting. And
oh, okay.
Like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. She took that angle,
And you denied it.
No. Dude, I've always had like, I mean, listen to what I'm saying. Like I've always had a, allergy to power and authoritarianism and like being told what to do. I don't want to just be a pawn. You know what I mean? Like I get into some shit and they're like, oh, we don't know this guy. He doesn't work for us. Thanks. No thanks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, so yeah, Putin.
Your background.
Yeah, he sings my grandfather's song. But yeah, I thought about going into the Foreign Service and I think I'd be a pretty damn good diplomat, but maybe in another life.
Huh.
Or maybe now because of the conflict that's going on between Russia and the United States. Because like, honestly, like there's not that many people with my background that actually spent like 10, 12 years living in Russia.
Dive into your background a little bit. So mastering in political science.
Yeah, so undergrad in religion and poli-sci. So I studied all religions just because I was interested in just like how different people try to explain like what the hell's going on, right? We've been trying to answer the same questions since we became humans, right? And that's always been fascinating to me. And I've always been interested in like, politics, understanding like what the hell's going on in the world, right? I never knew what I would do with that degree. I was just interested in it. And then I got a master's in poli-sci from New York University. And then I went to go work for, I worked for Jim Wolfenson, who was the former president of the World Bank. And yeah, going back to the story, what did he tell me? The first day that I was in his office, he had a meeting with Jacob Rothschild family, Christiane Lagarde, who was the head of the IMF at that time, a couple other people. And like, I had just finished like graduate school and like I was writing all these papers and I was like, this was around the time of this is before the financial crisis, but there were already like protests about like the 99% and the 1%, like capitalism is bad and all that stuff. I'm just sitting there with like people that I've read about and like studied. I'm just like, what the hell, And I go into his office and he's sitting there like smiling, looking at me. He's like, so what do you think? I'm like, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just listening. I just want to like, just observing. And then I throw out a couple ideas. I'm like, well, what about this? What about this? Like, isn't this bad? And like, why isn't the world like this? And he's like, look, he's like, you have most people, not just you, he's like, most people have no idea like what is actually going on. Like everything you see is the result of like things that have been put into place hundreds of years ago by people that you don't even know exist.
That
and
blows
like,
my mind.
Yeah, but it's true. And it's like, and the plans that are in place are looking 100 years in the front. And everything you see now is basically just like people reading off a script. It's like a play, like Shakespeare. It says that like everybody's an actor in somebody's play, right? Like somebody writes a script. So he's like, it's literally like that.
Was Bitcoin a part of that?
He passed before Bitcoin, but I don't think so. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think so.
Because we were, so to highlight on that, double click on that. It seems that there's world leaders that have technological innovations that are released, not in the public, like they've been innovated, but they're strategically, spaciously being released.
Yeah, it's usually like, defense departments of like countries that are like working on like high tech stuff.
I'm trying to remember who it was, like a former employee of the CIA too, that had like a speech that you would never hear someone say this.
Oh, the bald dude?
But yeah, it was back in like the 80s. He was saying like the CIA has certain technologies and innovations that could absolutely just
I mean, they've been studying all that
corrupt societies.
Yeah, I know.
Not to say that they haven't been doing that, but even just domestically, I think a lot of people don't think there's a threat or anything like to.
Yeah.
But
the government loves you and has your best interests at heart. So just take the shot.
So that's what this president of the World Bank was saying, that there's hundreds of years of.
He was just saying, he's like, don't even. He's like, you're not gonna, like you can write an opinion paper, you can go out and protest. It makes zero difference, like none. So he's like, his thing is like, look, focus on yourself, focus on like, you're basically a circle, right? A circle of influence. So he's like, focus on yourself, like become a businessman, or like, take care of yourself, take care of your family. That's one circle. Then you have your community, your friends. It's a bigger circle. It's like, okay, then you just like expand that circle, right? With your network and with kind of your sphere of influence. And then if you want to actually like make a change, like start, I don't know, like build a hospital, donate there, like going out and like, like
trying to change the world.
Yeah, they don't care. Like the people at the top, they think that, people are just like a statistic, you know what I mean?
Livestock.
Yeah. So, that was kind of eye-opening. And that kind of, I took that with me so that when anything happens in the world, I'm just like, all right, well, this isn't random. Oh, COVID. Oh, okay. Right. Sure. Yeah, I'm going to believe what you're telling me on TV. Yeah, okay.
Well, so even me not being remotely even close to having your background, I was able to still have some kind of sense.
Yeah, you have instinct.
Intuition that what's being told through the media it does feel scripted, and it does feel.
It is scripted.
Yeah.
You saw that video of like, they take like 15 different.
De Blasio was eating a cheeseburger and fries, convincing people to get a vaccine.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That's one example.
I know.
Of
it's such a clown show, dude.
Of things that you would see.
Clown show.
And it's like, okay, even if let's say the pandemic was just really purely accident, it wasn't made in a lab, the virus wasn't potentially constructed in a lab. And
even if it wasn't, their response was pretty coordinated.
That's the thing, though. If you have a brain, if you have a head, and you're able to like balance things out and understand what you're seeing, definitely felt coordinated in regards to how it was being handled globally too.
Dude, to me, like when the whole thing started, I even had a conversation with my dad. He called me. He's like, I was in LA. He's like, are you concerned about this? I'm like, nope. I'm like, this is organized by these people. And he's like, you're insane. He's like, what does Bill Gates have to do with anything? You know, I think now he might want to re-ask himself that question. But
even right now, it's like it's tough to talk about it with people because it's still you're treading on.
I don't care.
You're treading on
people's feelings, their opinions. Doesn't matter. What do you care? I mean, you know.
Yeah.
There's reality. There's facts. You know. I don't know. What was interesting to me is that when Bill Gates left Microsoft, I think it was in 2016, 2017, I was always curious. I'm like, oh, what's he going to do next? I'm curious. And then I found ID 2020, which was like, you could look it up. And that was like the thing that he founded. I'm like, why is he what is this thing? I went to ID2020.org and it's like digital passports that have your vaccine information, your credit card information, your credit scores, and like all this stuff. I'm like, why would this be like the next thing that he's like investing, like the richest man in the world, if you're not counting like the Sultan of Brunei and like these like, you know, well, families, but like, why is he getting into this? And then when the COVID happened, I'm like, oh, all right. Kind of makes sense.
So the recent train derailment catastrophe that happened in East Palestine, Ohio, guess what? Local news used an opportunity to introduce a digital ID to measure your breathing.
They actually had that before.
Yeah. I'm just saying it is becoming more prevalent, and I'm in the Bitcoin space, and this is something we're vehemently against, at least most Bitcoiners are. And the reason behind that is because it is a very convenient thing that seems very similar to an app that you would have on your phone that most of society may adopt, but it measures very, very personal aspects of your life. And so people have all these measurements, especially here at Squatch. People have different metrics of weighing and
heart rate variability,
all that. But the thing is that you shouldn't entrust it to random people. I think that in the future there could be, and I had episode 4, the founder of Start9, he's trying to create a decentralized sovereign computing. And I think you would like that too. I can show you after, but regarding like LifeArk and whatnot. But he's trying to create a movement of decentralized servers and people hosting their own servers and their own data. And you should, in the future, if that were to become a reality where people are owning their own data, you can still measure different parts of your body if you want to be really healthy and measure your heart rate and your blood glucose levels and whatnot. You can do that, but in a manner that's not outsourcing all of that data to like just random people. Right. And so this digital passport and ID is in my opinion, a huge threat to your privacy and rights in general. Like if people accept it, I was seeing it in Boston. I just left, thankfully, to come to Austin. But the new mayor started to say, well, if you want to go to any venue, you need this digital vaccine passport. And so if you don't have the COVID vaccine update, I mean, that just, to me, how obvious is it that they can immediately say, if you don't have this update,
you're not going to be able to drive your Tesla. You're not going to be able to get on a plane. You're not going to be able to do this. Oh my God, you just made a post about Joe Biden. Now you can't fucking go outside or drive your car.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or you can't use your credit card because you blocked your credit card. Like the shit that happened in Canada with the trucker protests is insane. You know, I mean, like with Trudeau, right? He literally went after people and blocked accounts of people that went and gave money to truckers that were protesting the fact that they were forced to do vaccinations on themselves. When the police that were at those protests getting rid of them fucking truck drivers didn't have to do that. It's insane. But the fact that like his government allowed like the government to go into people's bank accounts, see who they're donating money to, and then freeze their assets. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there was a Bitcoin account on Twitter that people were following, and he was passing out cold storage Bitcoin devices that had up to $8,000 worth of Bitcoin on it. So for
free, just to people.
Well, for truckers that had bank accounts frozen. This is the utility of Bitcoin.
Wow. Somebody there actually did that.
Yeah. See? Gave packages of $8,000 worth of Bitcoin. They unlocked that with the private key that was on that cold storage device, and then they could spend it
Good for him,
in a way that's like, hey, continue your movement. Or if you can't access your bank account just to buy groceries, now here, use this. And
I'm happy to hear that. And I actually think that there's a lot more people on kind of the good side of this kind of like fight that's going on than there are. They're just not getting as much attention because the media is controlled by one side of it.
Yeah, I follow him. I don't know if I can show you his account. He's a more prominent Bitcoin focused podcast. It's called Tales from the Crypt. Marty Bent.
Okay.
His mission is Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah.
And he's mainly focused on Bitcoin, but he does talk about, like, his most recent episode was talking about the vaccine and how it can disturb your microbiome. We were just talking about this in the sauna, but like,
don't even get me started.
So like, he doesn't just solely talk about Bitcoin. He'll talk about other like things that any individual and
where's
family,
he based? You know, where's that? Here in Austin.
He records at our office.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you know the dude?
Yeah, I run into him a decent amount. I mean, he's got it's his studio, it's TFTC Studios, and but we outsource it to the Meat. Do you know the Meat Mafia podcast? They shoot there as well, and Talking in Bits as well. So it's a Bitcoin focus, but more like sovereign individual kind of topics.
Have you read that book?
I have.
Sovereign, yeah.
Right after the Bitcoin standard, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
In the midst of the pandemic.
So to answer your question, I don't think that Bitcoin was like created by the Illuminati or like whatever, Bilderberg. Or
well,
like
so supposedly someone said it could have been created, like Satoshi Nakamoto could have been involved in the CIA previously, and he released this against their wishes.
Maybe.
I don't know. Like those are like different theories that people have.
I think it's cool that he kind of left himself
out
anonymous,
of the question,
you know, or if it could have been a group of people, right? Like who's that person that like who sent himself the first Bitcoin? What was his name? Hal Finney. Yeah.
He's dead now, but rest in peace.
Yeah.
Running Bitcoin. He's still got his Twitter account.
Yeah, I think he was definitely involved in it. Like the first couple people that got sent some stuff, you know.
Yeah,
that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna test it on your fucking friends that you do it with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jack Dorsey. Many people, not even just Jack Dorsey, but they agree that the timing of Bitcoin being released and the progress and the slow pickup of people running a Bitcoin node and testing it out and sending transactions, it was perfect timing. And it's you could study Bitcoin and certain topics regarding Bitcoin and speculation on how it was started. And embedded in, I don't think it was the white paper. Man, I'm going to get scrutinized by the Bitcoin community here, but
earmuffs.
Embedded in the code was like the date, 2000, I think it was 2009, Chancellor of England bails out banks for the second time. And it was like, Bitcoin was, so the white paper was released in 2008, but the code was
after that.
The Genesis block was in 2009. So right after the huge financial crisis, global financial crisis. Yeah. And so like in the code, it was like copying the New York, like I think it was the New York Times or one of the more prominent.
Oh, just so people know, like
this is what he's doing.
Kind of what sparked it.
And so
brilliant. I fucking love it.
And it wasn't really like a big thing, right? You only have a few cypherpunk email, like a small email list of people that start running the code.
Dude, I remember I was in New York, and I remember the first time I think I read something like a person bought pizza with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was like multiple.
It was the first
yeah.
And like my buddy, dude, I have a friend of mine from high school. He was like, "You should fucking buy this shit." And I remember like all the other people that like had money and thought about it, but like he was like, "Dude, you should get some of this stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll get it eventually." I never
Still
thought
can.
that I would. Yeah, I know. No, I have some.
People think it's so expensive.
I got a little bit.
But like there's
there's
economic analyses that show it could go up to 10 million per coin. And there's like actual breakdowns of why that could be.
I think within the next 3 years, it'll be up to 150. Easily.
150,000?
Yeah. For sure. But anyway.
Where were we going with all this though?
We talked about the World Bank. We talked about Russia. We talked about my app. What else? We talked about some conspiracy stuff. What else?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about just, so one aspect that I enjoy about you is that you're able to speak about these topics where some people have trouble. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you need to find, it's hard to find the truth nowadays on the internet.
Yeah.
And you're not afraid though to still talk about controversial topics, man. Whereas
we live in
like
a free country, man.
if you that's the thing though nowadays is that's
Do we?
well,
I don't know. Yeah.
one,
Luckily, I'm not super famous yet, because if I'm like, if I'm the founder of this family focused social media platform and I'm talking shit online, but at the same time, like, fuck it. If you don't like it, don't pay attention. You know what I mean? I don't know. But yeah, so you were saying.
I think just one aspect that I appreciate about you is that I think it seems to me like if you had, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's like if you had one piece of advice for people, it's to always have skepticism towards to the government and to question things and have an open mind and not label things as a conspiracy, because that does seem to be something that people do nowadays. Is like if there's something that's controversial that causes emotional triggering,
yeah,
whether it's COVID, whether it's something in politics, or whether it's whatever, it's like
gender, racial,
talk
political,
about talk about it. We need to talk about it.
Yeah, it's easier to just label somebody something than not engage and actually have to take the time to look at what the person wants to say, because God forbid that person actually might know what they're talking about, and then your beliefs, cognitive dissonance is real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want to be like, oh my God, like the things that make me who I am and my beliefs are just built on a, like a foundation of lies and bullshit. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty traumatizing for a person to realize that, you know what I mean? So a lot of people, it's just safer to be like, label you this, straw man this,
Well, yeah, because if you build your beliefs and you're just so attached to those beliefs and that's your identity, that's a part of your identity.
That's what I'm saying.
It's just like
people identify as political parties, or they identify as vaxxed or unvaxxed. They identify as the people who they follow or who they vote for. Like, because I've lived in different countries and because I've like come from different cultures, like I don't identify as myself as Russian or Jewish or American or like, we're human beings. We're fucking monkeys. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. So it's always been easy for me to just like never get attached to anything. You know what I mean?
Same.
Yeah.
I would say over the course of the past couple of years, I've felt the same way. Like there's just like, practicing what we've been practicing, going to the sauna, doing the ice, doing the gym, and not being afraid to open our minds to different things, reading all the time, changing our opinions. Yeah. You're not easily attached to one thing. And you obviously can work in a reality of having first principles too, but it's good to practice, not constantly having concrete, rigid judgments, and you want to continue to have an open mind. So one thing I would like to ask you though is, for me, I'm trying to really practice like having first principles. I've bought a couple books. I think it's by his name's Shane Parrish of I'm trying to remember the name of the company he works for. He created, but he's been on Tim Ferriss before. And
I love Tim Ferriss. Yeah, he was one of the first podcasters I was listening to. My buddy put me on him.
Same. But Shane, they created these books. There's 3 volumes, I think, so far. I have at least 3, and they're first principles. So the first one's like mental models, mental concepts, and then the second one's like physics and biology and whatnot, and then the third one's
sounds like the beginning of Infinity, the book.
Yeah,
a little bit similar.
So I'm really trying to.
I haven't heard of that one.
I'm trying to create a foundation, like a better foundation of knowledge around first principles. And how do you go about? We're living in a world of, as we've been discussing, social media having hit pieces of just, trivial, like emotionally triggering media narratives, and trying to really find the truth nowadays. And so my question to you is, how do you balance keeping an open mind in this environment of the truth being so hard to find, and still navigating with people in society being, you also don't want to respond with anger or anything like that, right? So you got to keep that balance. But if there's a lot of people that can be rigid, and so I'm curious as to how you navigate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think the only time that I would respond, I wouldn't say with anger, but with like emotions that are tied to that, or like when stuff like concerns like kids, you know what I mean? Like people can think whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, but like when you're trying to brainwash and like bring that shit into the classroom and like influence them, like what your kids are doing and what they're thinking, that's when it's like a little bit like, that's the line for me, you know what I mean? And then I guess like what's truth and what's not, like, how do I say this?
Just, it seems to me like I'm trying to just find.
Like, is there an ideology behind a certain bit of information that's being sold to me?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and
agenda.
what's the agenda behind? Yeah, exactly. So like when I see an agenda, then it's like, all right, well then it's obvious what it is. You know what I mean? So like, first principles. There's a guy here in town, Jesse Elder. He's a good friend of mine, awesome dude, and had a lot of different conversations about religion and all these like different rules and the commandments and everything. And coming back to first principles, he's like, you could basically take all the commandments and all the rules into like how to live a good life and like everything, and just put it into one rule. Like you don't need 10, right? So if you could break it all down into one rule, it would be do no harm. That's it, right? Psychological, physical, emotional, material, right? Like all the rules. Don't cheat on your wife. Don't steal. Don't murder. Like it's all just like doing harm. So if you can take that as like maybe a first principle, like a way to live your life, then that's great. You know what I mean? How to engage in a world where people are rigid and not open-minded. I mean, I don't know. Say what you think. Or if you're going to say what you think, have it based on information that you're not just regurgitating because somebody told you. You know what I mean? Like if I have an opinion that men can't get pregnant, that's based on something, right? That's based on science, right? If there's an agenda, and it is an agenda to convince people that they can have their periods, like, I think it's insane, but like that's something that's a topic of conversation right now. I'm sure in a couple of years, in a couple of months, people aren't even going to be talking about it, but it's like, that's an agenda. That's kind of things we're saying, whoa, well, you're not tolerant. I'm like, no, it's like heat is hot, cold is cold. Like you can't fuck with science. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So that's the thing is like some things are just, and like you said, even saying that you could offend somebody. Like, why would you like, dude, listen to comedians and like, listen to George Carlin, Eddie Murphy, like all these comedians that grew up, like they grew up in a time where you weren't afraid to offend somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and actually there's an interesting quote. It says, like the people that you aren't allowed, like pay attention to the people that you aren't allowed to criticize or joke about. And those are your rulers. You know what I mean? Like, why can't you make jokes about that person or this group of people or people that believe this or that? Why not? You can joke about it, talk about it.
Yeah.
Debate it. You know what I mean? Like what's off limits? You know what I mean? I don't know.
I agree.
So I don't know. I just see.
Yeah, no, that was a good answer. And
I'm happy to debate, like, I'm happy to listen to other points of view.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be like, oh my, you always listen. Like I had a conversation with a chick about like this specific topic. And she's like, what do you mean you're not tolerant? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, physically, how is it possible? What are we talking about? And then she's just like glitch in the matrix. She's like, yeah. But I'm willing to hear your fucking, what if, I mean, but it's funny, but it's like, this is like a topic of conversation. Like this is actually in the media.
Yeah.
A Supreme Court justice in her hearing is afraid to define
what a woman
is because somehow she's afraid, because somehow something is going on where these people have been told, yeah, don't talk about this.
Yeah.
Or toe this line or do this. Like, why is that? And what's interesting is I don't know how like deep you want to get, but it's like the one question that I still haven't figured out, although there is one simple explanation, right? Depopulation, whatever. But I don't know. Like I can't understand why. Like why are all these things happening?
I could regurgitate
on a cultural level in the United States.
Yeah. So something that comes to my mind, and this is the beauty of podcasting, is we're really just thinking out loud.
Yeah, we're going into phase 2. Now we're going fucking deep. Let's go.
No, I think the one theory that I have based off of my
hit that shit,
the observations that I've made, I think it's. I
think people are fucking nuts. Listen to the John Lennon quote. You know the John Lennon quote? Like he had a quote. Sorry, he had a quote that literally he said, and then like 2 weeks later they killed him. He was in an interview, and they're like talking about it. He's like, "The world is run by lunatics." He's like, "There's sick people that are running the world. It's like for sick means." And then 2 weeks later he's dead. Anyway, you were saying.
Well, the theory of what's happening with gender equality, this kind of evolution of how men think that they can get pregnant and
can I jump? But even that word, it already assumes that there's not equality. Like I grew up in a place where it's all right. It's by default equal. You're not racist. You're not like, I don't care. Like I would never even think that a person based on their color, their skin, or their gender, or their religion is different. But the second you create that phrase, you turn it into a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you
know what I'm saying?
I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I was never really that involved with politics, and I didn't really care. Like, I never had any biases towards someone.
Most people don't,
depending on who they are, like, or what they look like. That just wasn't a thing.
Gender equality. It's almost natural. Even the word is just like, well, who said they're not equal?
Yeah.
Why would you?
Gender studies, whatever you want to call it. I don't really I don't want to harp too hard into this.
Yeah,
I don't really know much. No,
I'm just saying the phrase itself. Yeah, it's not you. It's just like,
it's just what I've heard. Yeah, but
that's what people are talking about. Yeah,
naturally as a child, like it's in your natural instinct to just to speak and treat someone and communicate and work with someone just the way that you want to be treated.
Well, or the way that your like family showed you to like talk to treat other people, you know what I mean?
But it's just like this, it's now just this construct that just is so hammered down into modern day society now, and there does. So anyways, to answer your question is, I think it's to try to disempower masculinity, in my opinion. I think that's a part of it.
Strong men. Yeah. And the question is why? That's the thing.
Because strong men build society. I mean, there's a term.
Strong men build society, and they get rid of the psychopaths that could be in power potentially, right? Because they're not going to take the bullshit, right? Potentially. That's part of it.
Yeah. So I like, that's a very general view that I have, and like, I don't have a lot of evidence to back it up, but like, I mean, you look at the foods that we have in our grocery mart, you look at the narrative of, gender fluid concepts and all this stuff.
I don't know what that means.
Gender fluid, like you can be whatever gender you want, I think.
Sure.
Flexible.
Okay. All right.
So
I'm a fucking leprechaun. I identify as a cactus.
Yeah. But yeah, it is scary. What I will say is that.
Well, you know what it's leading towards? It's leading towards just like, well, what it could be leading towards is just government more. All right, so you're going to have weak men, you're going to have chaos, you're going to have all these things, and like, who's going to take care of you?
The government.
The government. Just come to daddy, and we'll, maybe that's what it is. And I've noticed it from a cultural thing. Like, you remember like in the 90s, and like, you used to have like action movies with like strong male figures. Yeah. You used to have like family movies where like the family unit, like you don't see any of that stuff anymore. It's like toxic masculinity. Like, what does that even mean? Yeah. Like, if you go to other parts of the world, that word doesn't even exist. It's just been a movement and a thing that's been created by pop culture and the media and whoever controls those things in order to, again, divide people, make them more afraid of each other, make people want to have less kids. You know, the U.S. has the lowest birth rate that it's ever had in like 40 years.
It's not just the U.S. either. I think it's other countries too. But the U.S. for sure. And that's scary to think about. I think Elon Musk has even said, like,
he knows.
That's one of his biggest concerns.
Yeah, he's like, depopulation is a myth, which it is, right? It's all bullshit. It's all part of an agenda, right? There's plenty of There's plenty of resources to feed and shelter and educate and guarantee the health of almost every single person on the planet. Like, we got plenty of resources. We have a fucking money printing machine.
Well, we can also create technologies that isn't.
Exactly.
So like, there's one book that I'm planning on reading. It's by, oh my God, his name is slipping me right now, but I think it's Alex Epstein, and he wrote the book Fossil Futures, which talks about aiming to use energy that has a human flourishing mission and concept. Whereas to me, the climate change narrative does not seem to be in that realm. It seems to be like we need to control, and it does.
That's what it is.
So like, when I've been buying plane tickets because I'm not from Austin, I'm from Massachusetts. I fly back home or I'll go somewhere else, and I do see one feature, and this is like an example that is elsewhere. It's not just on flight websites, but it's, how much energy are you
like, what's a carbon offset
using in this flight versus that flight, and you get points. And so this is kind of like a gradual.
That's also, they're going to be integrating all that sort of stuff.
Well, I know, I'm trying to say it for anybody that's listening. Like, it's a potential credit system, whether it's social, whether it's
carbon
or whatever.
Everything put together.
And that's why I'm so, I'm very passionate about Bitcoin. I think that it's, something that can help us get away from that. And
but even if you have Bitcoin, you're still going to be in society, and that society is going to have different sets of rules. Like, it's good for your money and it's good for it gives you financial freedom and flexibility, but if you can't leave your fucking house.
No, I agree. So that there's another, I've heard this conversation in the Bitcoin like ethos or just like the community, you can't just buy Bitcoin, hold it, and think that the world's going to change. So you have to actually, make more. Yeah.
Like what if governments just said, you can't use Bitcoin, you can't transfer it. You can't transfer it to USDT, and we're not going to let banks to
This is where game theory comes in. So if one government does that, another might not. And so then they flourish economically and have free markets, El Salvador. Yeah. So if the United States decided to shut it off, well, El Salvador or Russia is going to be like, yep, we'll turn it on.
Come and give me your money.
And so all the wealth, all free markets, business would venture over there. And that's happened in the United States.
Unless you have a one world totalitarian government that all makes the decisions for you. Right?
You will eat
maybe
the bugs.
Yeah. Klaus.
In a pod.
Klaus, who likes to dress up as God knows what on the beach.
I think Joe Rogan was just talking about this with Matt Taibbi.
Yeah.
I love Matt Taibbi.
Yeah, he's awesome. I didn't watch the entire interview. I just saw clips of it, but.
Pee break, but we're back.
Now we're going in phase 2.5.
We have a little bit of time left.
I should take some questions
from the audience that's not existent.
It's a joke.
I saw that you met, there was a picture of you with Jordan Peterson.
JBP.
How did you meet him?
At an event in New York. Yeah. I got a ticket, waited. I was the last person in line. Didn't get a chance to actually have a conversation because listen, it's so impressive. He did a 2.5-hour lecture, and then he literally stayed after and took pictures with every single person that bought a meet Jordan Peterson VIP thing. Probably for an hour and a half, he's standing there shaking hands and taking pictures with people. Yeah, and then after that, he did a Q&A for another hour. So he probably spent 5 hours in total there.
It's a lot of energy.
But yeah, listen, I found him through Rogan, which I'm grateful for because I've watched almost all of his stuff on YouTube. I've read all of his books. And he's the man. He's definitely, I think, one of the smartest people on the planet. And, as a person that studied poli-sci and religion, all these things, it was very cool to find somebody that knows all that stuff on such a high level and can actually incorporate that with, sociology and psychology and knowing all that stuff. It's quite impressive, and I hate the fact that he's getting so much, and again, it's the way the machine works. He's getting so much shit and accusations for being a misogynist and being anti this, and it's all, it's all just bad PR. It's all bullshit. You know what I mean? He's not, you know what I mean? He's just standing up for free speech. He knows what compelled speech is going to lead to because he studied that stuff. You know what I mean? He knows firsthand how all that stuff works. So, and he's one of those people that you ask oh, is it difficult to kind of just speak your truth or just say what you think and not be worried about what's going to happen? He's a prime example of that. You know what I mean? He's not going to go through what's called PR, social media training or anything like that, whatever the Canadian Board of Psychologists want to do. It's insane. Yeah, it's literally insane, what's going on. But yeah, I love Jordan Peterson, man. He's the man. I want to meet him sometime, and I want him to be involved in our project because I think it's useful. And plus, we have questions and prompts from psychologists to help people understand themselves better, to help them kind of write their own story. So I think he could be a useful thing. And I know that he's working on an alternative to the World Economic Forum that they're trying to create in the UK. He was on Rogan talking about that. Yeah. So I want to, as soon as that becomes public, I'm there. You know what I mean? I definitely want to be part of that.
Yeah.
So hopefully he gets Peter Thiel involved and another couple really smart people in there.
Yeah, he didn't announce the name of it, but essentially it's a competing organization.
I'd hope so.
World organization.
I hope so.
Yeah. A council of the smartest minds and trying to.
Well, you need the funding too. You know what I mean? You get Elon in there, you get Peter Thiel in there, then you can counterbalance the money that the other motherfuckers have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
I enjoyed Jordan's perspective, and that most recent episode on Joe Rogan, that he started to I love how Jordan is so particular and intentional with his words, and he can break things down so granularly to an extent that you're just captivated.
Yeah.
He did that with the most recent episode with Joe. And Joe announced, when he announced the episode, he was like, this was one of my favorite conversations with Jordan. And there was a part of this. I mean, the episode's almost 3 hours, but there was a
I've listened to it twice. Already.
I've listened to it, the whole entire thing, and I might listen to it again because there's a section of, they start talking about podcasts, like, what are we doing here? And Joe kind of like goes along with it and answers his questions. It's like, we're talking about things. We're essentially displaying our thoughts, right? This is kind of like the modern form of, debating and talking and putting your ideas out there, and
with the goal of mutually growing your knowledge and like getting to a point where you were higher than you came before, as opposed to saying, no, you're wrong,
right,
and not getting anywhere,
or just not doing any thinking for yourself and just reading things and believing whatever you see on certain avenues or whatever.
Yep.
And so it was, I'm excited to see the development of that play out. And
he needs to come to Austin. I'm surprised he's not doing a show in Austin.
I actually have a signed poster of him. So he came here 2022, might have been mid-year, and he did a lecture.
Okay.
Downtown.
I missed that. Damn.
But he's doing another tour, and he's going to be in, I think, Fort Worth.
He is. That's right.
So
you know when? We should go.
No, but I'm down to go.
Yeah, we could bring a little JBP t-shirts, be like, Jordan.
Yo!
But I mean, look, it's good that there's people like that in the world, man. It's really good.
Well, it's definitely caused a momentum for myself. And so for other men.
It's helping a lot of people, you know what I mean? Like, just open their minds to important thoughts and ways of thinking.
Well, just to open your minds.
Being in the world, yeah.
Just to think for yourself, or at least try to think better, you know?
Yep.
And write. And so, yeah, he's been a pretty big motivator. So being a father, I wanted to dig in here, maybe conclude it.
That's my favorite topic.
Being a father. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced being a father with your son?
Actually, the actual parenting side of it, it's so fun, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not difficult. Like, if you have a good relationship with the kid and you just like, there's nothing challenging. The challenging parts has been just me. Okay, so kids are like a mirror. Like, all the things that you have inside of yourself, all the stuff that you've kind of been taught in the way that you are, like, it just gets reflected onto you, right? And I noticed that at a very early age, you know what I mean? So I had to be much more aware of like imagine your kid is like a video camera and it's just like observing you all the time, even when you're not paying attention to you. Mm-hmm. Nonverbal signals and communications, like tone of voice, everything, the way you relate to the kid's mom, like the way you relate to your friends, like they're watching you all the time. Like, think about you and your parents.
Oh yeah.
Like, you probably know your parents better than they think you know them, because you've been observing them their entire life. So when I realized that, I try obviously to be a lot more conscious of like the way that I am when I'm around them. Right. And I think I have a pretty damn good relationship and like connection with my kid. It's like super strong. But challenges have been like things about my personality, like losing my temper or being angry, or like the way that I react to stuff that happens. Like, I used to yell at my kid and I used to raise my voice, and that would be like the one thing that like I would, get on myself about after doing it. I would always apologize and always talk to him, but like everybody has like a certain amount of kind of like patience up until they snap, you know what I mean? And everybody snaps like sooner or later, but I think I've gotten a lot better in general with that sort of stuff. But dude, being a dad and being a parent's like, I don't know why people are like, oh my God, it's so difficult. You have to make so many sacrifices. I'm like, what kind of sacrifices do you have to make? You're not gonna go out and party. You're not gonna go to a bar. Like, really? I'd rather spend time with my kid and like go for a hike or like do something cool.
Yep.
And like go out. So, I mean, there's nothing, it's honestly, it's not as hard as you'd think. You know what I mean? Like, it's really not. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Challenging thing is not being around him. He's in a different country.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here working on this where I could be, like with him, and he could be here. But
so he was born in Russia.
Yeah, he was born in Russia in 2015, and he's been living there his entire life. He spent the summer with me here in Austin, and then he spent the summer with me in LA. And I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, unfortunately I've kind of gotten used to it, like kind of like not paying attention to it, because I'm like, all right, I got the mission, I got the company, I got to focus on my stuff, and I'm doing it for a reason, right? I want to have him here, and then, I want to have everything up and running so we could live the beautiful life that we want to live. But yeah, there's sacrifices that need to be made, and that's, That's why I'm here. And then one of the other things that I use the app for, which is pretty cool, is that, I take videos of myself because he doesn't know what I'm doing and he doesn't know what I'm thinking. So like I have all these videos of me just like sitting at home, like working on the app that he's going to see when he gets older. Like, hey buddy, just so you know, like when I wasn't around, I was actually working on this and doing this. And I was thinking about you and I made all these videos for you to see, like all these messages, awesome, like kind of like a time capsule. Yeah. So it's a pretty huge motivator, man. I mean, like, kids, they can make you grow up and they can make you get your shit together. You know what I mean? In the best way. So,
I love that, man. And to go on to the subject of lifeArk, where do you, obviously the path of developing this project is going to take you to like different avenues that you didn't expect to. But if you could think about the evolution of this company,
we're going to be the Facebook killer.
The Facebook killer?
Yeah.
That's what you think?
It's a good title for a headline. Facebook killer, family focused social media. I mean, if we're not talking about like ads and making money, but I think what we're doing is actually maybe even more valuable than what they're doing now. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're trying to bring families back together. We're trying to strengthen the relationships that parents have with their kid, their influence on their kid. When the force, not to go off on a tangent, but like when the forces at work are actually working to pull away
the family.
Like, the family and like your relationship to your kids. And that's actually like, they're doing more to strain than they are strengthening that relationship. Then we want to be the people that bring that back. Right.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that I say, like when I present this thing is I'm like, all right, why is it that we have social media platforms and apps to help us cultivate and maintain every relationship, whether it's personal or professional, that we make in our lives, except for the most important? And everyone's like, and I'm like, yeah.
That's actually a pretty good way to catch people's attention.
So that's what we're trying to solve. That's what we're trying to create, is that platform to maintain that connection and not only just connect, because it's not like a messaging app, right? If you want to connect to your kid, just send them a message. But it's, passing on the best parts of yourself, what you've learned, what you think is important for your kids to know about you and the world and your family, and to the people that matter the most. Like, in my opinion, I think we're building the most interesting company with the most important mission. Like, honestly, like.
I agree. I do wholeheartedly agree. And that's something that that's been on my mind. Like I went to vacation with my family and still had a great time. We were present we had 2 weeks of time together, but a good portion of it still is like people are on their phones and they're just, I think this needs to be changed. And I know when I get older that I'm going to regret how many hours I spent on my phone, specifically just doing nothing, like zombie scrolling is what I'm saying. But
doom scrolling,
zombie scrolling, whatever you want to call it. But even my future kids and my sisters and their kids, and we need to strengthen the bond of human families and relationships. And that is absolutely something that I've observed, is like, we don't have these conversations with our grandparents or as much maybe. And
you regret it when they're gone. You know what I mean? Like the only thing that triggers it is a person passing away. And then you're like, why
didn't I asked this?
Yeah. I mean, the phones aren't going anywhere, but kids, who knows? Maybe they're not going to be glued to them. Maybe because they're going to grow up with, full 24/7 access to it. They're not going to become slaves to it. I mean, you don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I think things will change eventually. That will, hopefully new incentives will be brought in so that they're shaping their characters to be balanced and to be good human beings.
It's just, I think it's a question of like giving them something to do. You know what I mean? Like, what are you actually doing with your time? Like, if you're bored, if you have nothing to do, if your parents don't want to play or interact, and they'd rather just give you a phone instead of actually like engaging and playing Legos or doing something, then,
Yep. And that's what I would strive to do once I have a first child, is like not be lazy and be like, here, just use this.
Yeah. No,
instead of play games and.
You're going to like it. Yeah. It's fun.
Listen, man, we've got to go. Yeah.
Boom.
It was great speaking with you. Thanks for coming on.
Good first chat.
Yeah.
If we're not canceled by the release of this thing, then
I don't have that many people listening quite yet, so I think we'll be all right. But
they're gonna dig this one up from the archives. Like those motherfuckers.
Where can people find you and find your company, and just if you want to shout out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like my Instagram is private for now. The company's called Generation Transfer. The product is called LifeArk. We are going to be launching a private invite-only beta probably in a couple months. So you can go to generationtransfer.com or lifeark.io to find those. And, you know, for professional stuff, I'm on LinkedIn, Daniel Feltsman. And if you want to see a bunch of conspiratorial, beautiful pictures, then you can try to find me on Instagram. But it's going to be a decision that I have to make. Like once this thing gets up and running, like how public do I really want to be? You know what I mean? Like with my personal life and with my opinions, and maybe I don't want to be that public about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I'll fucking just throw out a meme that's going to fucking offend a bunch of people. You know what I mean? Like do I want to have that heat? Like, I don't know.
I understand.
So yeah. And maybe we'll get the podcast up. We'll see.
Yeah. I enjoyed having you on, and I think it's amazing that.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a Schumann, I think.
And this is your father?
Yeah, Pops.
And then your grandfather was also a composer.
His dad was a composer, yeah. So we got music in our blood.
Look this up, Vladimir Feltsman on Spotify.
Shout out.
362,000 listeners per month, and he's got 28 million listens on one of these songs. I didn't know anything about this. All right, next podcast we'll do in Moscow.
Well, he lives here.
Well, I'm just saying with you. If you ever want to.
Dude, summertime, if the war stops, yeah, shout out to VV. If you're listening, why can't we all just get along? Let's have some peace on the table.
Yes, I agree.
But yeah, it's good music, man.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of good stuff. So,
all right.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Peace out, everybody.
Conversation to on next time.
Yeah.
Peace.
Later.